Hello, everybody. This is Alan with Meet the Thriller Author. And on the podcast today, I'm joined by Dan Buzzetta. He's a litigation partner, a mafia aficionado, and now a thriller author. His debut novel, The Manipulator, is the first book in the Tom Berte legal thriller series, which will be released on August 19th, 2025. And so that's coming up tomorrow. So by the time you listen to this podcast, it'll be out so you guys can go get it. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. Very nice to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. So I have to ask you, so you are a litigation partner for a big national law firm. What drew you to the law and specifically to litigation? I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, so my earliest memory of someone asking me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I think I gave the answer I wanted to be a lawyer.
Wow.
I love the idea. I think even as a child of advocating, of trying to persuade, of representing, taking on an issue or a client, and trying to persuade others to whatever the cause or the issue might be. My parents always said that when I was younger, I would always question why I had to do certain things and try to persuade them that maybe there was a better or a different way to do something. So I think from an early age, I just thought of this would be what I wanted to do. And as far as litigation versus other areas of the law, I mean, frankly, when I went to law school, I really didn't think there were other areas of the law. I've now come to learn that, of course, there are. But to me, litigator is what being a lawyer is all about, right? Representing people, representing their interests in a court of law, and trying to, redress an injustice or get justice for them. And so I really enjoy doing this.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. Within your bio and your background, that you worked on a case with the Department of Justice and the FBI that actually inspired the series that we're going to be talking about here in a moment. But you actually recovered $240 million from victims. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that it parlayed into this series and how that all came together?
So I was one of many attorneys on a team of exceptional lawyers at a law firm. We were retained by a court-appointed trustee who was put in place because a publicly traded company, which had filed for bankruptcy, the two former co-executives of the company were charged by the Department of Justice with running what was essentially a pump and dump scheme. They would run up the price of the stock based on false information that they put into the marketplace. Investors bought the stock, and when the fraud was revealed by the New York Times in a series of articles, the company went belly up, and the investors were left holding the bag. And so the court appointed the trustee. The trustee in turn retained the group of lawyers I was working with, and our charge was to go and find the money. And it was a fascinating case that took me to far off places like Cyprus and Vienna and Isle of Man,
Mhm.
and of course London, a lot of places in Europe. And I probably spent 6 or 7 years of my life working on that case again with a team of lawyers. And ultimately, we succeeded in freezing $240 million, which had been secreted in bank accounts in the Isle of Man. And we got court orders to recover that money and eventually distribute that money to the investors. So when I turned to write this novel, I had had the general framework for this novel almost 30 years ago when I was in law school. I actually wrote the first three chapters of this book when I was in law school, the summer between my first and second year of law school. And I knew how the book was gonna start, and I knew how it was gonna end, but I don't know that I knew much of the details, or frankly, at that time, how to even write a book. I intended to get back to finishing that book at some point, but life took over, right? I finished law school. I took the bar exam. I started practicing law, building a career. I met my wife. We got married. We had kids, and life took over. And in the back of my mind was always, this story that I had started writing about. And as events happened, as I experienced things during my career, I always thought, gee, that might be a nice filler, right? A nice way to build the storyline. And so when I sat down to write this book in the early days of the pandemic in 2020, that case that I just mentioned was top of mind. And so I sort of weaved in elements of that case into the story that had been percolating for over 30 years. And that's how ultimately, after a year and a half of writing, that's how the Manipulator came about.
Oh wow! So you always wanted to be a writer. That was something that's always been with you for 30 years.
At least, right? I mean, I remember reading books when I was a kid, and in high school, and in college, and in law school, and thinking, "Gee, one day I'd love to do this." And it's funny, back then I didn't think it was that hard, right? How hard could it be? You have a story, you put down words, and you write it. Well, what I left out about what I just said is those first three chapters that I had written when I was in law school. By the time 2020 came around and I went back and dusted off that old manuscript and I read what I had written 30 years ago, it was garbage. It wasn't very good. So I scrapped those three chapters and started over again in writing. But yeah, I think I always had a goal to want to write a novel. And again, I sort of had the general outline of what the story would be, which eventually became The Manipulator, and I knew how I wanted to start it and finish it. And, 30 years of being a lawyer and life experience sort of gave me inspired me with the details to fill in, the 299 pages in between the first and the last page.
And so, were you always a fan of the thriller genre as a reader? Or?
I have. It's the genre that I enjoy reading the most. Starting with Nelson DeMille. I remember reading Nelson DeMille when I was in high school. And then, of course, I started reading John Grisham novels, right, in my, I guess, late teens, early 20s. And it was a genre that I always liked, suspense, thriller,
Mhm.
right? So I just started reading and reading, and I knew that, eventually when I'd get back to writing a book, it would be a thriller novel, and of course, a legal thriller in particular.
Yeah, yeah, especially with John Grisham when became so popular in the 90s. They must have really gotten your
I sort of feel like I grew up with him, right? When I was in law school and learning what being a lawyer was all about and how to practice law, John Grisham had just come out with his first couple books, and he was at the top of his game. And then, of course, there were the movies, right? So when I think of lawyers, at the time, I thought of Tom Cruise in The Firm, and all the other actors that played it. So he was a tremendous influence in me. I loved his work, and I thought to myself, gee, if I could write half as well and create story and plot lines that are half as entertaining as he did, maybe I can do it too. And so I set out to write the novel.
I'm kind of curious too now with because the legal system, being an attorney, sometimes that stuff can be a little dry, but so you're trying to make it exciting, a thriller, a page turner. But I'm assuming too, as an attorney, you want to keep things real but not bore the reader. How do you balance all that?
Yeah, so good questions. Obviously, with that one case that I mentioned about where we were traveling around the globe
Mhm.
trying to find money that these co-executives had defrauded these investors through this pump and dump scheme. There were some elements of it that were quite exciting. I mean, I remember being in Vienna, Austria at the time and going on a raid with local authorities to try to find a computer hard drive, which we thought had would have contained, evidence that we could have used to uncover the fraud. We worked closely with the Department of Justice. We worked closely with the FBI. So there was, an angle to it that was quite sexy, frankly,
Mhm.
right? Quite exciting. And I remember many days ending with sort of cliffhangers in the real case that we had. What are we going to uncover tomorrow when we do this raid? What are we going to uncover when we meet with this witness? Is this witness going to be able to tell us anything that's incriminating? We had documents for that we had discovered, but we didn't really know how these documents fit into the case. And so when we were interviewing witnesses, there was the anticipation of what would the client say. And believe it or not, maybe because I'm a lawyer, I find that exciting. I find
Yeah.
that interesting. And so when I wrote the novel, someone who I met early on told me that. the purpose of ending every chapter, the purpose of the end of every chapter is to keep the reader interested in wanting to read the next chapter.
Mhm.
And so what I tried to do in the manipulator, and I don't know if how well I accomplished it, but I tried to create sort of little mini cliffhangers. Maybe not at the end of every chapter, but at the end of most chapters, I try to leave the reader wondering what's going to happen next, right? An unanswered question, a feeling that the protagonist has. I sort of foreshadow that something might be coming in hopes that it gets the reader to flip the page and read the next chapter and eventually get to the end of the book.
Those punchy little chapters that keep you going. They're always fun.
Right, right.
So the manipulator introduces your character, Thomas Berte, Harvard-educated lawyer, but he gets pulled into some high-stakes stuff. I guess with like you already mentioned, the mob's involved. There's some moral and ethical things that he's got to deal with. Can you tell us just a little bit about him and is there how much of you is in him or not or none or
So Tom Berte, you're right, a Harvard-educated lawyer who is working at a top law firm. He's an associate at one of the top law firms really in the world, and he's on partner track. He had gone to Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law. He had had a lot of successes in his life, and he was always surprised at how he was able to achieve tremendous successes throughout his career, whether it be on the sports field, in college, in law school. He had a runway. Things seemed to come easily for him. He worked hard for it, but he always was able to achieve um, uh, things that he wanted. For example, he was a law clerk for the First Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a very prestigious position that only go to top law school candidates. And then when he's at the pinnacle of his career on a partnership track at this law firm, he's offered the number two job at the Department of Justice. Again, something that was surprising, but yet sort of in keeping with how easily things came to him. Um, and so he decides to leave his law firm track position, join the DOJ, and suddenly he's tasked with bringing to justice the elusive mastermind of an international criminal syndicate. I write in the book that this was sort of the Mafia 2.0, right? An elusive mastermind who lives on this mega yacht and commands his entire syndicate from this sailing fortress, never touching land, always eluding the authorities. And here Tom is tasked with bringing this person to justice. And really, who that person is, who that mastermind is, what his relationship is to Tom, and how Tom got all the benefits that and the achievements that he had secured in his life, is really what the story is about. And I hope people that read it will sort of come away thinking it's a fun and entertaining story to see how his successes and his achievements tie into the position that he was offered at the Department of Justice, and really who the mastermind is ultimately that he's tasked with bringing to justice.
is that something when you're writing these is it do you have also fun creating the antagonist, the villain, or is it as much fun as writing the good guy as writing Thomas?
I got to tell you, I think writing the bad guys is a
Yeah.
little bit more fun, right?
Yeah.
Tom is a wholesome person, right? Tom is a person who, might be a little nerdy, was a rule follower, always did the right things for the right reason. Even though he had tremendous success, it never got to his head. He was humble, and he recognized the value in working hard. He was the son of a single parent, and always appreciated what his mom had done for him and the sacrifices she made for him in his life. So he's a very honorable stand-up person. And at the end of the novel, he's faced with the decision: does he um, turn his back on people that have supported him and that have given him so much in order to pursue the rule of law and pursue justice, or not? So it's a moral dilemma that he faces throughout. And I really wanted to create him as a hero, and I think he is a hero. And Someone, frankly, that I would love to be, right? You asked me if I wrote him in thinking of me. I don't know that I'm as good as Tom Berte. He's really one of the people, he's someone who I think you come away with a real good feeling about as a hero. The bad guys, and there are a lot of them in this book, I had a lot of fun writing them, right? The anti-hero. There is Cosmo Benedetto is as bad as you can get as head of this organized crime syndicate that has killed people, that's involved in the drug trade, that's involved in financial frauds, that has cost a lot of lives and a lot of treasure. And some other bad people along the way, the head of the law firm that Tom used to work with, some rogue FBI agents who get in the mix of it, some of the people that support the mastermind. His name is Cosmo Benedetto, some of his lieutenants. So I had a lot of fun writing those parts.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it seems like the moral, uh, like it seems like the novel pits justice against moral compromise. Was that an important theme for you? Is that something that you set up from the beginning that you wanted to tackle that in your novel?
Yeah, so when I said that I had the general framework of
Hmm.
the book going back to law school days, that was sort of the tension that I wanted to write about, right? I mean, when you bring it down, when you break it down to its simplest, it's good versus bad, right? Justice versus evil. And I wanted that tension throughout, and I wanted there to be a good guy who is unquestionably a good guy, and he faces a moral dilemma of loyalty, trying to be loyal or thinking about wanting to be loyal to people that have been loyal to him, or the rule of law, right? The pursuit of justice, no matter the cost, no matter who gets caught up into it. One of the taglines that I came up with after I wrote the book, frankly, was something like, good lawyers keep secrets, great ones expose them to get justice. And this was sort of the theme that I had in this book, right? Tom knows certain things about his law firm, about his own family, certain secrets. And is he loyal and does he protect those that he loves, or does he expose those secrets in order to get justice at the end of the day? So it was definitely a theme that I had, at the top of mind as I was writing this.
I was kind of curious about this too with legal thrillers because I've read a few of them, and it seems like the authors of legal thrillers are usually always are attorneys, whereas a police procedural or FBI book, usually they're not agents. Or do you think that's something that your background that helped you, or was it a challenge writing a legal thriller?
I think it definitely helped me.
Mhm.
I don't think you need to necessarily be a lawyer to write good legal thrillers. I only do it from the perspective of being a lawyer, but to me, it helped me because it sort of gave me the perspective of what the lawyer would be going through, the mechanics, the little details, right? How do you build a case? What's the evidence that you get? How do you get that evidence? Those little minor details, which may seem inconsequential, but as you're building the story and as you're trying to explain things, my legal background allowed me to explain how things happened, how evidence came into being without either trying to suspend um, uh, a reality or make things up. So I leaned on it. I leaned on my legal background a lot. I never set out to write a legal procedural. The Manipulator is not a courtroom drama. There are some scenes in the courtroom, but this is not, the witness recanting on the witness stand, right? Or someone who's wrongfully accused of something. It's not that kind of a story. It's really a story about a lawyer who gets caught up in something that's way bigger than him that he never expected, and has a big decision to make about whether or not to follow that rule of law and continue being a rule follower or break it to protect some of the people that are closest to him.
And as an attorney too, I mean, I'm sure you've written a lot of legal briefs during your career. So what's the difference between that type of writing and writing a fiction? What's more fun?
Writing fiction finally freed me up to make things up and not have to cite check and source check every statement and every fact that I put into a brief. You're right. Legal writing for lawyers, everything you write has to be supported by evidence, has to be supported by case law, has to be supported by a fact in the record. And it's tedious and it's time consuming. And sometimes it breaks the flow of writing. I found legal fiction writing to be so much more liberating, right? I can write a story beginning to end without dropping footnotes, without having to interrupt the reader to explain what the source is or what the citation is to a particular fact. And in true, I guess, fiction form, it also allowed me the freedom to sort of create and make some things up within reason and which are credible, but especially with the technology, a part of the book that I write about this new technology, it allowed me that creative outlet to write something that, is fun and exciting and interesting, believable, but yet, imagined out of whole cloth.
Yeah, I imagine that's very, very liberating compared to to the day job.
The day job, it's very structured, right? There's a
Yeah.
format, and the way you write is very formulaic, and there's a reason for it, and a good reason for it. But if I had to write that way in a fiction work, I wouldn't have been published. I don't think anyone would read it. I don't think anyone would like it. So definitely a different style of writing, and as you say, a much more liberating style.
And so, what is your process then for writing when you're writing your fiction? You said that the lawyer writing is legal writing is very structured. Do you have an outline when you start to write your novels, or do you just kind of get the idea and start writing and see where it
So
takes you?
So, like I said, I know where my books start and I know where I'm going to end. What I don't do, and maybe to my own detriment, is I really don't outline every single detail in the book or even the chapters in the book ahead of time. I remember sharing this with my son and telling him about, my writing style, especially book two in the series, which will come out next year, and that I was having some difficulties with it because unlike book one, where I had the story in my mind percolating for 30 years, not so with book two. And I remember my son saying to me, "Hey, Dad, wouldn't it be just easier if you storybook the entire book ahead of time?" And he's right, it probably would be easier. But I'm so eager to get into writing. I'm so excited about writing. And I know I would wind up changing details anyway as I get into it. So I just immerse myself.
Mhm.
Now, clearly, I sort of, at the beginning of each chapter, I outline the chapter. I know what the chapter is going to be about. But I like to create as I go along. It's a lot harder to write that way. Makes it much more frustrating, especially when you hit a brick wall
Mhm.
and you need to sort of resolve that plot point before you could write the next chapter. Would have been much easier had I resolved it before I got started, but it's just not the way I did it. And I don't know that I could do it that way again because I'm so eager to start writing and creative, and then the details, come to me. It starts flowing.
And what is your writing process like? Do you like because you have your busy practice? Do you write at a specific time frames? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I write in the mornings. The mornings are the best time for me to write. Sorry about that. The mornings are the best time for me to write, from 6 a.m. Until about 9:30 when the emails start coming in and when the phone starts ringing and when people from work when work takes over. So I'm a morning writer. I like to do it early and I like to be done by 9 o'clock and then start my day job. And I like to write on weekend mornings. Most people like to go for runs or jogs or play golf. I get up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning and I'll write through 10, 11 o'clock at night in the morning. And that's when I get my best writing done.
Hmm. Yeah, because you also like a volunteer firefighter, right? That's read that in your bio. So you have a busy
So yeah, as if I'm not busy enough in my life, I became a volunteer firefighter at the tender age of 52. COVID obviously was a terrible time, but there were some blessings to it. Because of COVID, I was no longer commuting 4 hours a day to my office in Manhattan, 2 hours each way, right? I was working from home and did for the first 2 years of COVID. So that opened up a lot of opportunities for me. I started writing The Manipulator, something that I had long wanted to do, and now I had the time. So the 2 hours I wasn't commuting, I wrote. And then I also became a volunteer firefighter, which required, probably 12, 15 hours a week, 2 nights a week from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. were classroom trainings, and then one day on a weekend, all day out on in the field practicing the drills. So it was a huge time commitment, but I took the opportunity provided from working from home to fulfill a dream that I really wanted to do since I was a kid, right? Being a fireman and helping my community and being involved. So I managed to do both.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So yeah, you checked two big dreams, firefighting and writing thrillers.
Yeah, I had two big
Impressive.
dreams while still maintaining my day job and still being a husband and a parent and sleep. I don't have much time for sleep, but sleep's overrated. But look, I don't have very many other hobbies, right? Yes, I love traveling and spending time with my family, but um, I don't play golf. I'm not in a band, so the time that everyone has in their lives that they fill with things that they enjoy doing, I choose to fill with writing and serving my community as a volunteer fireman.
Yeah, you mentioned that this is the first book in a series, and I noticed the book two and three are going to be released next year. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like what's coming up next, and what's the projection for this? Are you seeing this long term or?
So it's interesting. I set out to write a book, one
Mhm.
book. I only had one book to give. And after getting an agent, which was a process onto its own, and after putting it out submissions to publishers, and frankly having more rejections than I care to even remember, the wonderful people at Severn River Publishing called and said, "We love your manuscript, and we'd like to give you a four-book deal to write a series." And I remember thinking to myself and saying to them, "That's great. Who's going to write the other three books?" Because I didn't think I had three other books in me. I didn't think I had the time. I didn't think I had the story in my mind. Again, I had set out to write one book and one book only, but they prevailed on me. Their model is to offer authors the opportunity to write series, and
Mhm.
so I took a chance and I did it. I wrote book two. Book two is continues the story of Tom Berte. It takes place 5 years after the end of the Manipulator, where Tom is decided he's still practicing law, but in a small one lawyer shop. He has a shingle outside his office in the country in a ski town in upstate New York, where he's living with his wife and child. So he becomes, a small town lawyer after having been the number two man at the Department of Justice and on partner track to an elite law firm. And as when he's in this role as a small-time country lawyer, um, he's hired by a client to investigate some nefarious dealings in this small little town. And of course, nothing can remain small when you're writing fiction. So it's a story about, international terrorism. It's a story about Tom being caught in the middle of this, plot that could potentially um, harm, hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, with a weapon of mass destruction. And it's how Tom, you know, um, weaves through all of that. And he's this book. I made it be that he's a little bit morally compromised because how he goes about getting the evidence to prevent this mass tragedy from happening is not necessarily the way lawyers normally do it. And so he faces that dilemma of following, the rules, so to speak, right? Because he's a rule follower, but yet on the other hand, having the potential for this mass tragedy to occur. And he has to navigate those rules. And I think ultimately he makes the right decision on how to do it. So that book, which is called The Winter Verdict, will be out in 2026. The third book, System of Justice, I think also will be out in 2026. To be honest with you, I haven't finished writing System of Justice. I think the publisher got a little ahead of myself. Um, and I have no idea what book four is going to be about. So any suggestions, I'd love to hear them.
All right, yeah, let them know, everybody. So yeah, and one quick question I always ask too, because I'm always so curious about what other writers use to write their books. Do you use Word? Do you use a Scrivener, some other type of software?
So I use Word.
Okay, yeah.
I started, interestingly enough, on Google Docs. I don't know
Mhm.
why I started on Google Docs, but I found it too too different from Word. I use Word at work, and so I transitioned early on in writing the manipulator to using Word, and I haven't looked back. And I'm a Luddite when it comes to technology. I'm always asking my son, who is the techno star in our house, for advice. So he's my IT director, and I lean on him a lot. But yeah, I'm a Word guy.
All right, Dan. And before I let you go, though, I always ask too my guests because I have aspiring writers that listen to this podcast, and any advice that you could have for them, especially if they have a busy schedule like you have.
Yeah, make time, right? Make time. Be intentional about it. And find the time that works best for you. Don't try to cram it in. I don't know. Speaking for myself, I can't write when I'm cramming it in. I can't write in between other projects. For me, having a set time every day works, and that's the time that's early in the morning when I'm at my best. My mind is clear. I haven't started my day yet. I'm at my most creative. So find a time that works for you, be intentional about it, and make time for it. If you like the story you're writing about and you really want to have a product that you're proud of with the goal of being a published author, make time. Make time for it. And that's what I've done. And, so far, I have a book coming out tomorrow. So, I've achieved my dream of being a published author. I don't know if it's good, bad, or not, and people will make their own choices and their own decisions of it. But I'm proud of having done that.
Yeah, congratulations. No, and it looks like it's a great book. So, yeah, so yeah, congrats. It's always exciting that launch day.
Yeah, a little nerve-wracking. Look, again, I like the book. I don't know if anyone else will like the book. I don't think that, this book is not going to create world peace. It's not going to change anyone's life. I didn't set out to do any of that. I set out to write a story that I thought was entertaining. I hope it's entertaining. I hope others think it's entertaining too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Dan. It was great hearing about your journey from the courtroom to the page. It's
Yeah.
very fascinating.
Thank,
Uh,
thank you, Alan. I appreciate it.
yeah, and Manipulator is out August 19th. So go get it, everybody.
Thanks for your time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Enjoy
Bye.
reading.